Hey everyone, and welcome to another Kanoa Reviews, where we review games both new and old on all platforms. If you like the content that I make, then please subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so you'll never miss a review when it comes out. Today we talk about the game Irony Curtain, which at first glance, you might not associate with the type of game that I play a lot. And you would be right. This game was actually requested by a viewer, and during a Steam sale, it was dirt cheap, so I decided to get it and see if it would be up my alley. Now, Irony Curtain is a point-and-click adventure game much in the style of old point-and-clicks like Grim Fandango, Full Throttle, Sam & Max, etc. Nowadays, I actually don't really play point-and-click games anymore, but I used to very much back in the day when I was in elementary school. The reason for it was simple. Back then, games in general did not look all that great. Even though we made the jump to 3D graphics on the PlayStation 1 or Nintendo 64, they were blocky and with grainy textures. However, on the PC, you had some point-and-click games that straight up looked like a cartoon, so to a 7 or 8-year-old me, that looked absolutely amazing, and so much better than what we had on consoles. That is why during that period, I really loved point-and-click games, though it should be said that I mostly played children's point-and-click games like Freddy Fish, Spy Fox, or Pink Panther. And especially Pink Panther's Passport to Peril was a game I absolutely adored and completed multiple times when I was a small child. Actually, now playing another point-and-click game after so long had me feeling so nostalgic, and thus I looked up a playthrough of Pink Panther's Passport to Peril again and got overwhelmed by the feels. That nostalgia feeling is one heck of a drug. Later on in life, I actually started to lose interest in point-and-clicks, since the pacing usually was just so slow and I was not interested anymore in often watching a static screen and just performing trial and error with the mouse. What's more, is that many point-and-clicks, like Monkey Island, have multiple actions you can do with the items in the environment, like look, touch, speak, etc. And so the amount of trial and error you need to do becomes even more. I also had a rude awakening call when I played the remastered Grim Fandango after so many years, and that was a bit of a letdown. I remember so well when I was a child that Grim Fandango was always one of the games I really wanted to play because it looked like a 3D cartoon. But the PC that I had at that time was not powerful enough to play it. Then so many years later, I finally got to play it, and the puzzles in that game were actually the reason for it being quite a letdown. You see, many of these cartoony point-and-clicks actually have puzzles that defy the laws of physics or simply don't make a whole lot of sense. Monkey Island is another point-and-click that suffers from this. The puzzles, or should I say, solutions, are more often than not meant to be funny or quirky, and thus not always make sense, making the puzzles sometimes very hard or frustrating, since common thinking won't get you anywhere. You almost have to think in the boundaries of a cartoon world, which basically has none. And therefore, I stopped mostly playing point-and-click games, with a few exceptions like the later Sam & Max games, and I also played a game called Silence. But with Irony Curtain, I decided to delve back into the world of point-and-click to see how that was. It is an homage to the older point-and-clicks from the 90s, but I would say it's toned down a little bit when it comes to the actions you can do with the various objects, which does get appreciated. The game's setting is a fictional satire on the Cold War, with the free capitalist West being in conflict with the communist nation of Matryoshka under the rule of the Great Leader, which is clearly a satire of Stalin. The story revolves around a journalist called Evan, who's a great fan of communism and who gets a chance to visit the magnificent nation of Matryoshka after meeting with a seductive spy. There he finds out that the nation is actually completely nuts under its regime, as Evan slowly finds out that communism might not be as cool as he originally thought it was. It honestly is a really tongue-in-cheek take on the Cold War, with the game properly making fun of both sides instead of taking one. Capitalists and really strong American patriots get made fun of, and of course plenty of communists and communist ideas get made fun of as well. The setting is one of the game's strongest points because it's so original. Because the game revolves around socialism and ideology, it is definitely not a point-and-click game that would be a big hit with the younger crowd, since a lot of dialogue and jokes will go straight over their head. The humor does not always work, but I did chuckle a couple of times. There are some pretty funny jokes towards lovers of Star Wars, actually, which had me very surprised and taken aback in a good way. There's also some tongue-in-cheek toilet humor jokes thrown in there about showing one's ass for inspection or being at the eye level of the zipper of a giant statue when kneeling. I do have to say that the humor does not always work, and sometimes in the dialogues they do go on a lot about things that don't really add anything to the story, nor will it contribute to your progressing. It's just more funny dialogue, which sometimes unfortunately is not that funny. But overall the setting is the strongest point along with the art style. The art of the environment is gorgeous and also evokes that 90s style with proportions and shapes being very distorted, making it feel even more cartoony. They are all hand painted, and you can feel the love and dedication that went into making each environment very detailed. There's plenty of funny Easter eggs and funny jokes to find as well. But what about the gameplay? Well, much like any point and click, the game revolves around you clicking on various things or people in the environment and hoping that you will do the right thing to progress the story. Often it will work like a puzzle, with you for example having to retrieve an item from a locked container, and thus you have to perform a different action first to get an item which you can then use to get a key, and with that key you can open the locked container and use the item from that container to do something else, etc. It's constant action-reaction, but it works, though again it is the trial and error mechanic that might turn some people off. Luckily the game doesn't go too far out there with its logic, and I would say most of the puzzles are fairly easy to understand when it comes purely to the clicking. There are also actual puzzles that are on a separate screen where you for example have to properly connect wires or put in dial codes or put certain pictures in the correct order. These puzzles often require a bit more thinking, but are pretty okay too. There were some puzzles which I did not understand, but through just spamming you could still complete them very easily, which was a bit of a letdown. There's a few minigames too that require you to do a certain action in a limited amount of time. The big thing with this game is that rather than a static screen, you move your mouse around. The camera gradually pans left and right in larger areas, making it sometimes feel like the game Valiant Hearts, though that one is of a higher production and quality. The cool thing too about the puzzles is that you can tackle them in various orders, meaning that you can complete them in a non-linear fashion and play in the style that you want. In each screen or location, there's also a payphone which you can call for a hint. The game sometimes does ask some weird things from you that feel a bit out there, like create a flower including pot from a metal piece, a wooden tablecloth ornament, and a pan. Or to make red socks by having someone else's socks cleaned first, only to smudge them with food later. And also during these sections where the story does not progress at all, and if you are stuck or don't find a solution fast, the game can really drag on, and it becomes that trial and error again, which is dull. All in all, I think Irony Curtain is a fine game, and a great homage to the point and clicks from them olden days. It does not try anything new, but it also does not want to, since this is a game for the fans of those older games. In the end, Irony Curtain gets a solid 7.5. Straight as can be in terms of point and clicks. This game would only be interesting to you if you do indeed like point and click games, but if you do, this is definitely one of the better ones that channels that same feeling of the classics you know and love. I still know it's not really my thing, and has by now been overtaken by games that have you control characters in real time instead of clicking. Though checking this out really made me want to play my childhood game again of Pink Panther: Passport to Peril. Now that is a classic.